Hello everybody, it is your girl Bria Van Kooten and I am back with a new video. As you guys can read by the title, we are here for the And Just Like That review. I'm super excited to be here doing this review because if you know me, then you know I love Sex in the City. That is top 5, one of my favorite shows ever. I have watched seasons 1 through 6 so many times, and part 1 and 2 of the movies, of course, because I'm that person, like I watch all 6 seasons and then I have to watch the movies right after just so it can line up. So now when this season is done of And Just Like That, I'm gonna restart everything, watch the movies, and then watch And Just Like That just so it can line up. I'm so annoying, but I'm super excited. We're gonna talk about episode 1 and 2 because HBO Max added both episodes on Thursday, so let's get into this review, y'all. And of course, guys, if you did not watch And Just Like That yet, don't watch this video because it's gonna be all spoilers. I'm gonna be talking about both episodes, but if you like spoilers, then stay and watch and complete the video. But definitely go check out the episodes. It was pretty good and sad and dramatic, and it was a lot of emotions, okay? I'm still recovering. Okay, so episode 1 begins with, we're in a restaurant. We're in the restaurant setting. As usual, you know, the girls, they like to go out to eat. So we have Carrie, Miranda, and Charlotte. They are in a restaurant getting ready. It seems to be post-COVID, like after, because they're talking about, oh, you guys remember when we had to stand and sit 6 feet apart and blah, blah, blah. And then, so they're waiting on their table to be called. And then at that moment, we see Bitsy Von Mufflin rolling up on them, still chatting away. One thing I could say, like, the characters look really good. Like, they age really well because we haven't seen Bitsy in a while. So I was like, okay, all right. And of course, Charlotte, Miranda, Carrie age well. Like, Stanford. Like, everybody looks pretty good. So I was like, yes. But yeah, back to Bitsy. She comes rolling up, chatting. She was like, then she goes, where's your 4th musketeer? Of course, Samantha. Right out the gate, we get the Samantha elephant out of the way. And then Charlotte goes, oh, she's no longer with us. And see, at that moment, I was like, did they kill my girl off? And then Bitsy goes, and then, no. And Charlotte goes, no. She's not dead. She's just no longer with us. So we find out that Samantha moved to London for work. So that's what we find out in the first 5 minutes of the episode. So that was pretty good. I like that they got it out of the way in the beginning of the episode. And I'm also happy that they did not kill her off because I would have been so mad. Like, they left the door open, so like, say there is another season or another movie or something, you know, we can bring her back. And then just for the respect of the character, like, I'm just happy they didn't kill her off because Samantha was the Sex in the City. Like, she is the sex. Like, like that, she is a big deal. I agree, and I also saw other people saying Samantha would never leave her friends. Like, she's not that person that's just gonna leave and ghost you, because we find out she moved to London and she's not talking to Carrie, Miranda, or Charlotte, and because Carrie dropped her as a client, and then, you know, she's kind of mad. And but watching Samantha over the 6 seasons in the movies, like, Samantha is a ride or die friend. So just her personality of the character, I wouldn't see Samantha just up and leaving and just ghosting her friends. Like, she is a ride or die. So that was out of her character, but they had to do something just so they won't say that they kill her off, you know? So then they get their reservations. They're in the restaurant. They're sitting at their table, and Charlotte starts talking about Miranda's here because Miranda's going back to school. Miranda's going back to school to get a master's in human rights. And so she was like, oh, you're going back to school, so do you want to like dye your hair? You know, you want to be like the sexy redhead, because, you know, Miranda is gray. She has the gray hair. And Miranda's like, no, I don't need to be like the sexy redhead. You know, we're grown, we're evolved, we're older. Like, I don't need that. And they start talking about like them coloring their hair and stuff like that. But to each his own, you know, there's women that are older and men too that are older that they dye their hair because they don't want to show the gray, and then there's some people they keep their gray. So to each his own, it just depends on who you are. And then we meet Lisa, who Charlotte was going crazy over because she is a big deal, and Lisa is Nicole Ari Parker, which I'm super excited that she is on the show, because when they showed who was coming, I was like, oh, this is gonna be interesting to see her character and her being added on into the show. We have a lot of women of color. We have Black and we have Latina women on the show, so I love to see it. Like, I love to see this new fresh diversity, and you know, and I know for a fact they also added women of color, people of color on the writing team as well. So I love to see the diversity and the growth of the Sex and the City franchise. Miranda has to go to class, and then Carrie says she has to go do her podcast, and she was like, yeah, I have to do a podcast. They're like the new jury duty, which is hilarious because so many people have a podcast. It was a joke and a little shade to the people with podcasts, because so many people have podcasts. So that was a funny moment. So then we get to Charlotte's house, and we see Lily and we see Rose all grown up, and then we see Harry, which is my favorite husband. Like, I love Harry. He's so sweet. Like, he's definitely my favorite husband of all of them. So we see Harry, still fun, still cool. I'm happy that the couples are still together. So then we jump to Carrie's house. She's home. She said, I'm home, honey. And we see Mr. Big walk out, John. Because now, you know, we grow, we old, so we're calling him John, not Mr. Big. But he will always be Mr. Big. But he comes in, and then they have this new tradition where they are picking an artist in alphabetical order, and they're dancing every night. That was like their COVID thing that transitioned post-COVID. And they're making dinner, they're cooking. It's just a cute moment just to see Carrie and Big together and like this adulthood, and just happy. Like, we love to see it, because for the past, of course, you know, seasons 1 through 6 and then the movies, it was just a lot of drama. So to see them in that happy space, it was really, really nice to see. Then Miranda goes to class, and this was a funny moment because it was just cringe. Like, it was so cringy. So she walks in, and then she sits in the chair, it's the professor's chair. So one of the students says, oh, that's the professor's chair. So she leaves, and then a woman comes in, which I knew, obviously we knew that was the professor. You know, watching shows, you know certain things. So she walks in, I was like, oh, this has to be the professor. So she sits, and then Miranda goes, oh, that's the professor's seat. And she was like, oh, I am the professor. And so she's like, oh, but you're here. And I'm like, oh God, not her here, child. It's, you know, but of course, like I said, and just trying to diversify, like I said, they're trying to bring diversity into the show. So they're talking about hair, and then we have this whole moment of, you know, I'm taking your class. I have no problem with you being Black. I'm taking your class because you're Black. And it was just very cringy. Like, I was literally staring at my screen like, it was so cringe. And then, you know, because then Miranda's saying like she learned so much during the protests and COVID and like about Black Lives Matter and all that stuff. So she was just trying to show her wokeness, but it was very cringe. So now we jump to Carrie at the podcast, and Carrie is very demure. Like, everybody's speaking about sex and masturbation and all that, and then Carrie is just very like to herself. She's not really saying. She made a little joke, but then they asked her what's her name? I forgot. Oh my God. But her real name is Sarah Ramirez, but she asked Carrie, does she masturbate? And she didn't want to answer it. Like, she was very cringy. She didn't want to answer. And then she was like, have you ever masturbated in public? And she's like, oh, not since Barney's closed. So she made a little joke or whatever. But I was just like, oh, Carrie. And then we see after Sarah tells her, oh, you need to be more open. You need to speak with us. Give us more dialogue. And she was like, you know, you're the OG in this. You had a column writing about sex. And, you know, Carrie was like, you know, but I'm not as raunchy. And that was writing, not speaking. So then Sarah goes, oh, well, you need to speak more. You need to step your pussy up. I was so weak. I was like, yes. That part had me screaming. So yeah, then we jump to the next scene and Carrie is home. She's typing on her computer. We see, of course, nostalgia, typing on her computer, talking about masturbation. And then she goes into the room and she asks Big, does he masturbate? And he says yes. And then she asks him to masturbate for her. And I was like, okay, all right. We're getting real freaky. Okay, I love it. And yeah, he starts masturbating, but he's like joking, making a joke out of it. Because he starts saying like, oh, Carrie, oh, Carrie. And then he pulls her over. It was a cute moment just seeing Big and Carrie together. It was definitely such a cute moment, seeing them happy and joyous. Now we jump to now. I skipped the part where Lily, Charlotte's daughter, obviously is having a recital that night. And she asked, because Big and Carrie were supposed to go away, but she said Charlotte wants her to come to the recital. So she said her and Big are going to leave later so then she could come to the recital. So we see her getting ready. She's in her closet. We walk into the closet, which I was like, ah, love a walk-in closet. Her closet is beautiful. And she takes out her Manolos, you know, the wedding shoes, the blue shoes, the Manolo Blahniks, pulls them out. She puts on her outfit, puts on the shoes, and then she walks out and she looks at Big and she's like, oh, you know these shoes? And he's like, oh no. She said, you noticed something? He was like, no. And he's like, I'm just kidding. I know the wedding shoes. And Big is like staring at her and she's like, what happened? And then he was like, you know, just looking at you. And from that moment, I knew something bad was coming. Like in those movies and shows when people are just staring, like something bad is coming. And that has triggered me because in real life, when like moments like that happen, I get a little scared. Like that triggers me. We get to the recital and then we see Steve and Miranda. We find out Steve is 60% deaf in one ear and 40% deaf in the other, which I was like, oh, Steve-o. And then we see Anthony and then we see Stanford and they're mad at each other because Anthony says Stanford was taking too long to get ready and Stanford comes out the taxi. He was like, you left me? You left me? And he like, Steve, would you leave Miranda? And I was like, oh, Stanny. It was so good to see him. Obviously, we know Willie Garson has now unfortunately passed away. Rest in peace, Willie. Super, super sad just to know and watching this episode and just knowing it broke my heart, truly, but it was great just to see him, and it was great that he even got to be in these episodes, knowing like it was such a close time span of them starting to film and then him passing away is like crazy. But I'm glad he got to at least be in these episodes. I found out that he's gonna be in 3 episodes, so it's good that he got to be in these episodes. So then we get into the recital. Miranda brings wine because she said I had a rough day, and then we see Lisa comes in with her husband, her son, which is also who he's also playing the piano in the recital, and her mother-in-law, which her mother-in-law is the snooty, stuck-up mother-in-law who doesn't like her daughter-in-law. She thinks her daughter-in-law does nothing right. She's one of those. Like, she was giving Lisa, it was a crazy moment. So then Lisa sees Miranda with the wine and she's like, oh, can I have some? So it was a funny moment, just again because they pictured her as this like high-class woman, prissy, so to see her just be like real chill and real down to earth, I was like, all right, cute. And then Anthony makes a joke. He was like, oh, give some to the black Charlotte. And I was like, oh my God, Anthony, because he would say something like that. His one-liners and zingers, Anthony is hilarious. It's great to see him back on the screen, for real. He's so funny. So then now Big stayed home. He didn't want to come to the recital and he wanted to just be on his Peloton. Lily starts playing the piano and then we see Big riding the Peloton and it goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth between the scenes, and I'm like, nah, something is about to happen. I know it. I felt it in my soul. And then obviously paparazzi and social media kind of ruined this, not ruined it, but it kind of like, you saw things that you shouldn't have, that back in the day that they wouldn't have caught. So we knew that a funeral was gonna happen because social media, somebody on social media posted like a funeral, them preparing for the funeral scene. So we knew someone was gonna die. So I was like, oh my, don't tell me they are about to kill Big off. Like, cause that again, in previous movies and TV shows, you know that back and forth, something is going to happen. So said, so done. Big has a heart attack, and it broke my heart. Like, I was just staring at my screen in shock for it was a while. I was just staring at my screen because I was so in shock. And it was just like, really? On the first episode, y'all couldn't even give him like 3 episodes at least? Like the end of the first episode, especially, like I'm saying, it was great to see Big and Carrie just in a good, happy place. So y'all had to kill this man off in the first episode? Like, Chris, I was like, Chris North, come on, really? The first episode? I'm still that's what I said, I'm still recovering, because I still am like, damn, they really killed this man off. So then we jump to the end. Carrie gets home. He's still alive at that moment. He has the heart attack. It's like he waited for her to get home before he died, because then she ran in the bathtub because he was about to take a shower. Ran in the bathtub, and the drama, we see her running. The Manolo Blahniks are in the water, and I was like, oh, not the drama of the Manolo Blahniks in the water. It's getting wet. And I'm like, why didn't she call the cops right away? But of course, Picture Story is a show, so, but in real life, I'm like, wouldn't you go to your phone and call the cops right away? I was like, why is she not calling? I was literally yelling, like, why is she not calling the cops? Why is she not calling the cops? I don't understand. So he dies in the shower in her arms, and the way they ended it was so dismissive. Like, it really got on my nerves. Like, and she was just like, and just like that, Big died. And I was like, that's how we gonna end the episode? Mr. Starr, Mr. Darren Starr, this is how we ended the episode, sir. All right, so then we jump into episode 2, and the first thing we see is Brady and his girlfriend having sex. The bed board is knocking on the wall, and it jumps to Steve and Miranda's room, and they're hearing everything. Then the phone rings. Steve can't hear the phone. Like I said, he's deaf in 60% in one ear, 40% in one ear, so he didn't really hear the phone. Miranda's like, Steve, the phone's ringing. Answers it. It is Carrie, which obviously I knew, because we know obviously Big just passed, so it was like, okay, it's Carrie. Then we jump to the scene. Miranda's at Carrie's door, and of course they're hugging. We see the body bag in the background, which was like, oh my god, they really killed him off. Like, I'm still mad. Like, episode 1, I can't. But we see him go out, and then Miranda stays over, obviously. The part that was really, really sweet, that at the end of the scene, she is spooning Carrie, and I was like, oh. Broke my heart. Broke my heart. So then we wake up the next morning, and Carrie is on Google searching funeral homes. Later on in the episode, her and Charlotte end up going to a funeral home, and Charlotte has a whole crying drama moment. You know, Charlotte's very emotional, so she's crying, telling Carrie, you blame me. I feel like you blame me for Big dying, like, because I shouldn't have made you come to Lily's recital. She starts crying. The funeral director walks in and thinks that Charlotte is Mrs. Preston, of course, because she's crying. And first of all, before that, Carrie was already like, I don't really like this funeral home. Big would hate this. So she's already gonna leave before, but she tells the funeral director she's leaving, and the funeral director thinks that she's leaving because she mistook her for Charlotte. So, but it was really because she didn't care for the funeral home. So we see her she literally shoved Charlotte in a taxi, because she's like, you know, Carrie's not for the emotions. Like, we've been know that she's not for it. So and then we jump to the scene where Stanford comes home, because Carrie still has her apartment, and in episode 1 we see Carrie say, you can stay. Stanford asked Carrie if he could stay at her apartment, because of course him and Anthony weren't getting along at that moment. But he comes home because of course they find out about Big, and they start hugging. They're like, we are so lucky. We gotta stop fighting about petty nonsense. I love you, I love you. And again, very, very sad moment knowing Willie Garson passed away in real life. So That moment was super, super sad. Like, it gave me chills all over my body. Again, rest in peace to Willie Garson, for real. Like, Stanford is iconic. And he is an amazing actor. Like, he has credits on credits on credits of work, okay? So then we jump to another scene of Miranda in school. Another awkward moment. She gets through security with her ID. Her professor comes in, but she didn't have her ID. She had it, but it was lost in her bags or pocket or whatever. She had to find it. Here comes Miranda, the savior, the white woman savior complex. That's what they're trying to portray in the scene. And she's like to the security, do you know who this is? This is Professor. The professor's like, Miranda, it's okay. I just have to find my ID. It's okay. It's okay. So she gets through, and it's still another like cringy, awkward moment. But then later on, Miranda actually ends up saving her because there were some creeps on the train, which portrays New York very perfectly because there's always creeps on the train. And later on, they have like a little moment, which was really nice to see, which I knew it would happen eventually, of them getting along in some capacity. Scene before the funeral, we see Steve and Miranda getting ready for the funeral. Steve is upset, of course, and him and Miranda are hugging. Brady walks in and he was like, come, we're not okay, hug us. They have a really nice moment of them hugging, which was, again, really sad. Because again, I was just like, really, I'm still, like I said, I'm still distraught because I really can't believe they killed him off. So then we get to the funeral scene. The funeral is real minimalistic, real chic. Everything is white, cream, like it looks real nice. Carrie's funeral outfit is real cute. She got the little headpiece, like, you know, Carrie loves a headpiece. And then we get in and then we see the flowers on the casket. And then Carrie goes, what is this? I said no flowers. She goes to the funeral directors and she is like, what is this? She was like, you know, the funeral director, one of the women was like, you know, the flowers are beautiful and someone sent it to you. Carrie's like, who sent it? And as soon as she said who sent it, I was like, oh, this is from Samantha. I already knew, like, certain things you could just predict. And she opened the card and it said, love, Samantha. And again, in true Samantha form, she's that girl that's, I'm like, obviously they didn't kill her off, so they had to, like I said, they had to find the way to be like, all right, she moved or something. But in true Samantha form, Samantha would be there. Like a funeral, she would be there for her friend no matter what. She would have flew from London to that funeral. She would have helped Carrie put the funeral together at that. So, like, Samantha is that friend. So, again, it wasn't in the Samantha Jones character. But again, they have to go along with the storyline of her moving away, which, you know, it is what it is. So then we go through the funeral, we end off, and then we see Bitsy again. She's at the funeral and she's telling Carrie, like, you know, people say I know what you're going through, but they don't know. I know, because I just lost Bobby. We see Bobby has passed away, which Bobby fine. I love that episode with him and Bitsy getting married. So then we jump to Susan Sharon. Y'all remember Susan Sharon? She popped in. I was like, who that? Because, you know, she was a brunette, now she's blonde, and she looks really good. Like, to me, she looks younger than she did in that episode when Carrie told her to leave her husband, her crazy ass husband, and she was like, oh, I forgive you, Carrie, you don't have to apologize, blah blah blah. And I'm like, what Carrie apologizing for? Because you and your husband made up at the end of that episode. Like, what I miss? Did I miss a season? Because from what I know, the dog, at the end of that episode, that dog brought her and her husband back together. Charlotte's dog. So I was like, what is she talking about? That was a little weird ass scene. I didn't think, it was nice to see her, but we didn't need that scene. Like, that was unnecessary to me. So then we jump to Brady smoking outside. Carrie's boss, she and Brady are outside. Miranda sees and she's upset. She starts yelling at Carrie's boss like, oh, you know, he's underage, he's 17, he shouldn't be doing that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, this is gonna be awkward because I know Carrie is about to introduce, she's gonna introduce and she's gonna see that's her boss. So yeah, so said, so done. A few seconds later, Carrie's like, I want you to meet my ride or die, this is Miranda, this is my boss, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. But they ended up having a real cute moment. And spoiler, but this is something that I'm gonna predict from watching the season, because it looks like, because they showed, obviously they showed what's coming this season, and it looks like Miranda and Steve are in like a marriage slump or whatever, and then she's just like, oh yeah, we're married, but is nothing really there, and they just eating pizza, whatever. They're just like friends. So from what I can tell, I can see, I feel like they're about to put Miranda and Carrie's boss together. I see it. That's something that I definitely predict. At the end of the season, I'm gonna come back to this video, and I feel like I'm gonna be right. Comment down below, let me know if you agree with me. So then we jump to the end of the episode. We are back in Carrie and Big's apartment, and we have Carrie, Stanford, Miranda, and then Charlotte is ringing the bell, and she's like, Stanford, you have to hide because Charlotte can't know that you're here because I didn't call her. And if Miranda's here, it's okay because it's Miranda's night to stay with me. So Stanford is like, I'm not good at hiding. He ends up go hide, and then Carrie answers the door, and here he comes to run to get his martini glass. I'm like, oh my God, Stanford. So of course Charlotte sees him, and she gets upset, and she's like, see, I knew you were mad. I knew you were mad at me. And then Carrie, she has a moment, and she's like, I should have went with Big. I should have went with him. I just can't take, she was honest with her. She's like, I can't take your crying. Like, I just can't take the crying. So that broke the ice. So she was like, just come in. So they all went back into Carrie's apartment. We see, oh, I think like, yeah, the scene before, early in that scene, Big's ashes came, and Carrie was just like, so they don't even call, like, if you're warned, it just shows up. It just shows up at my place, whatever. So we see Big's ashes come, and we see Carrie can't sleep. A couple hours later, Carrie can't sleep. She ends up sleeping, going on the couch, and we see her face to face with the ashes because she has the ashes in the living room. And that's how we end off episode 2. And of course, it shows the preview of what's to come, which it looks like it's gonna be a pretty good season. I'm definitely excited to see where they're going with this. And from what I know, it's just gonna be a limited series, the 10 episodes, and that's it. We'll see if, you know, because we'll see. They could say that, and then later on they add another season, because that's what happened to Will and Grace when it came back. Will and Grace was only supposed to be 10 episodes and that's it, but it ended up being like 2 or 3 seasons when it started back. So we'll see what happens with And Just Like That. But overall, I feel like the 2 episodes, I like them. Of course, there were some moments where, like I said, they didn't need, or I'm mad that they killed off Big, or, you know, Samantha would have been there for her friends. But other than that, I did enjoy the episodes. It just feels good to have my girls back on TV and my guys, because like I said, I'm a huge Sex and the City fan. I love the show so freaking much. I've watched it so much. It's probably the show I've watched constant, like on repeat. It's Sex and the City, Girlfriends, and Single Ladies. Like, those 3 shows I've watched so many times. Like, I love a show with 3 or 4 women main cast and just being badass bitches. Like, I love I stand. So I'm definitely gonna be reviewing each episode every week, so definitely stay tuned for my reviews. But we're gonna see where these 10 episodes take us, y'all. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, you already know, give it a thumbs up. Comment down below, let me know what you think of episode 1 and episode 2. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know. Of course, subscribe to the channel to see more, and follow me on my social medias. I have my personal account at Bria Van Kooten, and I have my other account is at Discussion the Show, which is for this YouTube channel, of course. And guys, I will see you all in the next one. Peace, love,